Alright, so from there we can look at the protein sparing action, where we get to see that the dietary intake of carbohydrates and fats indirectly influence the protein requirement of an adult. So if a person is receiving a dietary consumption of carbohydrates and fats that is inadequate, some of the dietary proteins is going to be converted to energy generation. Thus, the protein becomes unavailable for building and replacing the worn out tissues. So this will lead to the dietary requirement of protein increasing to make up for this loss of the quantity of proteins. So the opposite is going to happen when a patient or a person is receiving an adequate amount of the carbohydrates and fats, where the proteins will no longer be required to provide energy. Thus, they are going to be used for building up of the body proteins. So the protein will thus be spared by the carbohydrates and the fat, and this is what we are terming as the protein sparing action. So in this protein sparing action, carbohydrates are more efficient than the fats, simply because carbohydrates are used by almost all of the tissues. And when we look at the reasons for an increase in the protein requirement, we're going to see that number one, inactive growth. So a ton of dietary proteins are going to be required to supply the amino acids that are going to be used by the growing tissues. And then examples of this state is pregnancy, infancy, childhood, adolescence. Those are good examples of the active growth session. And then you also have prolonged illness, trauma, and surgery, which can cause major catabolic responses. And then to meet the increased energy that the body is going to need. So this response is mediated by tons of chemicals in the body, such as epinephrine, glucocorticoids, glucagon, and certain cytokines, which are going to be excreted in increased amount. So this will lead to the breakdown of body proteins, and this breakdown in body proteins must be replaced by dietary intake, so as to prevent the negative nitrogen balance, where the excretion becomes more than the intake. So the last one is going to be in old age. So you would require an increased protein intake in old age. Now this seems paradoxical due to the fact that we said the proteins are needed in childhood, in adolescence, due to the fact that those guys are growing, but the old people are not growing. Why do they need proteins? These guys need proteins because they need and they generally consume fewer calories. So the protein is there to provide a large percentage of the total calories of the body. And then furthermore, we get to see that absorption of dietary proteins may be less due to digestion and absorption problems, which are common in old age. So to balance up that loss of efficiency in the digestion and absorption of protein, a high intake is required. Yeah.